Yeah, 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 yeah. I run my fingers through her hair as she smiles and says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one who loves thing is the one who loving?
Most people don't really realize, but the point of putting chains on African people was to get African people used to limitation. Those chains literally taught us that we would never be the fullness of what we ever once were. And one of the things that chains did to African people is it kept us from touching each other. And the power of our touch, the power of our anointing is really what our children have missed. We reprimand our children, but we don't anoint our children. Our children don't know the feel of our hands in the love of their being and their existence. They know the feel of our hands, especially as Black men, in reprimand or in punishment. But they don't look forward to us touching them. And if you ever have a child who looks forward to your touch, that child will come seek you when it's time for that child to make life decisions. Because it's your ashe that makes that child most excited. You know, I'm trying not to get excited. You know, it don't take me and you.
No, because I have some things I wanted to talk with you about, and so I spent a good 30 minutes watching Kirk Franklin's documentary, which is also a promotion for his next album, which I think is genius and brilliant. And Kirk Franklin has been masterful at taking us on these journeys through song, right?
Yes.
Through the word, and then bringing it out through music. We're going to talk about music today. So this is a perfect alignment. Y'all, I didn't talk to Dr. Black. I haven't had a chance to talk with him. So he didn't know where I was going. I didn't send him nothing. I sent him nothing. I never sent him anything. Sometimes I'll send him an article. Please read this before you come on. I have not sent you a thing. Kirk Franklin talks about being adopted by a 65-year-old Black woman. I think he was 4 years old. She was a relative. But he also talks about knowing his mother. He would see her maybe once or twice a year, which he said was more painful than he related it to like white people being adopted. You know, you may not know who your parents are, but you know that you were wanted in a situation. But to see your mother, he's like, the wound never heals because there she is. There she is. And why isn't she taking me with her? Why is she continuously leaving? So the self-hatred, the insecurity, and he talks about, growing up, being bullied, not having anybody that he could run to except the Lord.
Right.
The piano and music was where he found his solace, but he was still struggling as a human being all the way through his adulthood, right?
Yes.
And I think about, man, this thing, if you watch it, you're going to go through some stuff. And I was talking to Dr. Carr this week because I said, I can't personally relate to it because I knew I was always wanted. I knew that, I was always wanted from birth. I was, the favorite little grandchild because I was my grandmother's on my mother's side first. So I would spend my summers with her. And boy, did she spoiled me to the point that my mother and I would get into fights about what she would allow me to do. Like, because she would just talk to me and I would come back talking like an adult, because I'm spending time with my grandmother. We would play Pacino. She would take me with her little friends, her older friends, and give me some coin, teach me how to play Pacino with them. So I'm with these women going to bingo, eating everything. And she just doted on me and would just rub to the point, the touch, thunderstorms. I would be curled up in her arms. And I remember it like it was yesterday.
Wow.
But my dad too, even though he worked 1,000 hours a day, my mom, like I knew that I was a child that was wanted. So when I'm watching Kirk Franklin talk about the disconnect of seeing your mother and then she keeps leaving and knowing that no one wanted you, no one wanted him. And I always tell people, we want people's success and their fame, but we don't want their trauma.
Right.
Sometimes you can't have one without the other. Sometimes there's an equal measurement of your trauma and either breaks you down to nothing or you rise above it and you become Oprah or Tyler Perry or Kirk Franklin.
Right.
Or Steve Harvey, like those are manifest, or Viola Davis.
Right. Right. Sure.
But the rest of her sisters are not Viola Davis. Oprah's rest of her siblings are not Oprah. Only one cracks through the concrete. And I thought about you because I've been thinking about you for the last week. And you have not a similar story, but kind of a similar story.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the wonderful thing is, it's so funny you're talking about Kirk Franklin because of course I'm a choir director and my choir sings Kirk Franklin stuff. We sing practically everything the man's ever published. I know his story extraordinarily well, right? And the thing that I have come to understand is the thing most people are missing is that we as Black people, we keep looking at our lives and our existence in terms of what our physical eye can see. See, African eyes are always pressing person to see in the invisible. What we do through Christianity, etc., is we see the visible and we try to draw conclusions upon it. But one day, what I would love to tell Kirk Franklin is actually Kirk Franklin, and before Kirk Franklin was ever born, before he was ever conceived, he chose that 64-year-old woman to rear him. He chose her. And the reason he chose her is because that 64-year-old woman loved God enough to plant the seeds of the love of gospel music in him. That's why who he is now. But he needed to know his mother so that his wound would be just close enough to him that he'd never forget it.
Why do you need to remember your wounds?
You've got to remember the wound. If a person does not remember the wounds, the beauty and the power of your healing gets distorted. See, the first thing that every healer must be is wounded. By definition, the healer must be wounded. Why? Because in order for a healer to heal, you have to know the depths and the dimensions of pain. Lord, please help me.
You've said this before, and I'm still struggling with it because I think most of us, our life's mission is to not be in pain. So
Yes.
we run from pain.
Yes.
No one runs into pain. Nobody's trying to be, although I feel like some of our lives are an example of running into pain. Like we keep
Yes.
making these same choices in
Yes.
relationships, but no one, I think, consciously runs into pain. Nobody
Nobody.
is looking
That's
for
right.
pain.
That's right.
We're
Nobody's
running
looking
from
for
it.
it.
We're going to
But the
anesthetize. We're going to
irony,
drink it away. We're going to have sex it away. We're going to find
right,
a way to not feel pain.
right. But the irony, Karen, is nobody wants it, but everybody's going to have it. Every life is going to have it. But it's like who would ask for rain if you didn't have to have it? But rain is doing a magical work. We love the fruit of rain, but none of us loves the process of rain. We say, oh, it's a gloomy day. Is it? Is it really? I thought you planted seeds last week.
Why are you going to bring up that? The epiphany that came from this week, Dr. Black is here, y'all. If you want to join us in conversation, the number is 866-801-8255. I had a revelation this week as well about pulling up weeds. I'm
Yeah.
OCD by nature. Like I will pick on something, and so if I'm walking, I see some weeds, I will probably be in my garden for an hour trying to pull up every weed. I had a weed-like situation with people. As I was telling the audience, I went down to South Carolina to walk the paces
Right,
of the actual
right.
retreat. And as I was there, I was complaining in my mind about some people there, right? And they're not this and this and that. So I'm gonna go down there, and and I came with
Right.
that energy. And then I got there, and it wasn't that story at all. That was what I had fabricated in my mind based on my experiences with certain people and
Right.
how they normally behave. I made assumptions. Now, I might have been right about the assumptions to a point, but what I didn't realize as I was going through the paces was that I didn't communicate certain things. So therefore so like the place is going to be shut down for a period of time. And then there was like no noise on the beach. And then I was like, but then they were like, no, it's 10 o'clock. We're going to be off the beach by 10 o'clock. So I was like, in my mind, they're ruining the singing. And then, so I'm like going through this and they were like, nah, come on. And then they were like, no lights. You can't have lights. And I was like, all of this resistance, but they have turtles. It's a sanctuary, actually. It's literally a sanctuary, an Audubon sanctuary for wildlife, right? So there's butterflies and birds and turtles, sea turtles are attracted to the light, which I didn't know anything about. So if you have lights on the beach, you're going to put the life of the sea turtle in jeopardy.
Right.
It wasn't explained to me by the person I was dealing with. I was like, that's all that needed to be said. I can understand that. You know what I'm saying? So in communication, what I'm realizing is most of our conflict is in a lack of communication. and then we make these assumptions, and then we act out of the assumptions, and then you create these, conflicting barriers that then keep you at odds. And it just turned everything around, and it was the most loving experience. I can tell you that I'm excited. Like, I left there like I cannot wait to come back here many times, not just in January, because of what I understand about this space now and the people.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Woo.
So I want to just, say even that. So I came to this conclusion, instead of worrying about the weeds, let me just plant more seeds. And then planting the seeds, I'm going to pray for these people. So I came into that meeting praying for everybody in the meeting, praying for everything that we were going to come into contact with. And I left there with the exact answer to my prayers, because instead of complaining, pulling up the weeds and worrying about the weeds, I sowed seeds of love. And it came back in that period of time. And I was like, can this work in other areas? So I've been trying this. I've been working it out, Dr. Black. And guess what? It works.
Of course it works. Because Karen, if I'm going to be bold in this instance, if you're not careful, you underestimate your ashe. You underestimate your ashe. In other words, if you're not careful, as spiritual a woman as you are, and with the unbelievable goal you have for this project, right, in terms of transforming people's lives, you have set this up to transform human life. God, trees, flowers, the butterflies, they all agree with you. So there was nothing for you to fight. There was nothing for you to worry about. Even when it looked like it wasn't, of course it was going to be right, because your righteousness was in the conceptualization. You were already in the righteousness. There was nothing for you to fight. All you were supposed to do is stand back and watch God open the way. You said this was a sanctuary. Well, of course it's a sanctuary, because you were bringing people down for a spiritual experience. Of course it's a sanctuary. That makes sense to me. And what I'm saying in terms of your ashe, Karen Hunter, when you plan a thing, when you put your hands on it, when you conceive a thing that's for other people's life force, against every single human odd, it's going to work. But you got to stand on that before you see that it's going to work. And as it's falling apart, seemingly, you got to stand right there still and watch it all come right back together. That's the power of your ashe. See, everybody doesn't have that power of the ashe, because everybody's motives are not always pure. Everybody's motives is not always other people's transformation. Sometimes people's motive is their own money. In your case, the whole point of doing this is because you want people to get a taste of what it is you feast off of all the time.
Through her hair, and she smiles and says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one you're lusting is the one